All right, good. I'm fired up. Welcome to the Spincast Cycling Show. I'm your host, Brian Kellison, Lisa Vries, without his name tag. Brian White, Casey Shum, give him a hard time. All right, we were just talking about this off air. We're going to go straight into this. We got plenty of stuff to talk about, but coffee stop already, the discussion off the air. I am not for a coffee stop. I don't think the coffee stop or coffee, what is it called? Is it the coffee stop or is it coffee power up? Whatever it's called, it shouldn't exist. Welcome. Yes.
Anti-coffee stop.
Yeah, I should have a coffee right now.
A break.
No,
let him take a break.
It's if you lose the pay spot, you can just re-log in. If you lose the pay spot outside, you can teleport or do whatever you want. Now, the argument started is it used to be you could do whatever you want during the 3 minutes or 30 seconds that you could have, and somebody changed it because they're improving it or making it worse, whatever. Making it amazing. They're making it amazing. And Casey's frustrated with it that he has to not pedal. He has to not pedal like you can soft pedal. Yeah, I'm for that. You're like, oh, I can't even breathe. I can't pedal backwards. I can't even have a heart rate when you're getting a free ride at a high power, right? Can't you go really hard and then hit coffee stop and that's what you get locked in as?
No, you get locked to the people around you.
Yeah.
Oh, is that all?
If you're riding with someone, say they're doing 3.5 watts per kilogram, you're like, oh, I'll just ride with him, and then you drop down to 1. Then
you stay with them.
You go down to 1. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
It locks into the riders around you. So that's why people get pissed off in tour of whatever Zwift does. Because they'll get to a climb or the hard spot, and then you see all these coffee stops coming up, and then people are like, oh, they're cheating, coffee stop, blah, 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 blah.
This is exactly why I love the coffee stop, because it just like immediately sent DK off the deep end, right? Because that's the only reason we do it in the Tour of Zwift or whatever. You find the hardest place in the race, and you drop it, and you just watch chat blow up and go absolutely bonkers, and that to me, that's worth it right there. That's it.
Yeah,
but honestly, the frustration is you're going hard. Like I'm barely holding on to those, and I hit a hill. I still want to soft pedal when I take that break. I've ripped my guts out to go for 30 minutes. I hit the hardest part of the thing, and I can just hold on with that coffee stop. But I still want to soft pedal. Maybe I'll submit that ticket and cry medical, right? Like it's not healthy to go from 400 watts to a complete stop. You need to let me pedal for my own cooling down and not ruining my muscles. Maybe Zwift will listen to me.
Maybe.
Well, and the other thing is, it's only in group rides. So, you know what I mean? Like that's all.
Yeah, it's not
you
a
can't do it in races.
It's fake. It's fake, and we're complaining about it. I'm not complaining about it. I'm complaining that Casey's complaining about it, that it's changing, because he's like, oh, why did they change it from it being horrible before, and now it's worse than what it was?
Why do they spend time trying to change it? I guess why is that where they're spending the time?
Go ahead.
I want to see this happen. And these guys have done so. This all started from the Gong Show. The stuff from the podcast that I was on.
The Nowhere Fast.
The Nowhere Fast guys. Yeah, and they've done some. They've actually seen some instances. So if you get creative with the coffee stop, if you sprint off the front of your group, like if you say 3 guys get a breakaway, right? If you sprint off the front of your group and get like just a little bit of a gap, 3 or 4 seconds, so you're not in that group, you don't necessarily have to be halfway across. If you sprint out a couple seconds and hit the coffee stop, sometimes it will randomly pull you forward, and it'll suck you forward at like 60 kph to the break.
Oh, like the rubber band
That's
effect.
How broken it is. Yeah. Like it'll snap you way up the road. You just have to get away from the people around you, so it doesn't automatically lock you into them. So it's not those guys actually want it to be an actual power up in a race. Like let us race with it. Let us actually use this dynamic in a race and see what kind of chaos we can do.
I'm
more to
ahead.
neutralize it. The group could just stop.
Yeah, because they were talking about like doing like 2-man attacks with it, right? Like you and a teammate attack, you get a 3-second gap, one guy drops the coffee stop, full rest, while the other guy just rips his legs off for 3 minutes. As soon as that 3 minutes is up, the other guy coffee stops, and that guy's been rested for 3 minutes, can go, and 2 guys can have 6 minutes and go.
It's something different.
Yeah,
that's good. That's an improvement, right?
Just
Brian's
don't pedal when your coffee stops.
Notification.
Hey, you get free wattage. That's the power. Look, you have to power, or you have to pedal for the other power-ups. This one is the one you don't have to paddle.
Right. My
Right.
rant was, why do you give me a button to close it if all I have to do is pedal? Right. Like they need to like come up on the screen and say,
Oh,
like,
yeah, that's the streak, the continue
Yeah.
the continue to continue to continue.
Warning, you are pedaling.
Yeah, yeah.
Coffee
Right.
stop will
Yeah, yeah.
close in
Yeah, yeah.
5 seconds.
I do want an point. We want to touch. We'll touch on the little tech stuff. There was like a new sauce thing. I can't remember what it's. I don't know what it's called.
Pedal games.
Pedal
Pedal
games.
games. Yeah.
Okay, so it's like an overlay, whatever. And then I had my own overlay, which I use with OBS. I don't know anything about pedal games, so if anyone wants to touch on it, but I did a profile. I want the profile at the bottom of the thing and the gradient,
Yeah.
gradient issue, which I think
Is
I
that like
complained.
Indie Vela? Well, Training Peaks, like that kind of thing? Where
Yeah.
it's on the bottom?
Yeah, which is from RGT, and maybe RGT got it from Ruby, and I don't care who got it from wherever. They should all have the same thing. Be Cool has a gradient that goes across the whole screen, right? And so what I did is, if you look at my whatever ride from yesterday, is I took a slice of the little mini map and I zoomed in and increased the size of it and put it at the bottom of my screen. And then I started watching my OBS screen for my stream, and I could see the little parts of the ride a little bit better than if it was like a real gradient like in Biketerra. To then plan like, oh, this is the little incline here, I got to go up and do this, and then this is a little part where I can rest, or this is a place where I could attack, or this is a place I could do this, so on and so forth. But that is not something that I don't think anyone can pull from. It's not like in the sauce/pedal games. What's it called? Pedal games.
Sauce has a profile that's pretty good that will show you a full route on a profile. I don't use it, but they do.
You
have
can
one.
see that.
Yeah,
on Sauce?
they do have one. Yeah, I've seen some guys use it especially in. I think it might even be plugin. Like that Sauce has gotten so advanced now that there's plugins for extra stuff on Sauce too.
Yeah.
But I've seen guys do that with the ZRL races, where they're looking where the upcoming sprints and stuff are. Because not only do they have a really detailed profile map like that, but they also have like a distance to next segment banner thing.
Oh, see,
showing.
that seems useful to me.
Yeah. The pedal games is pretty cool. So the pedal games, I think, has been in the plan for a long time. I don't remember the second guy, but Jonathan Levy is one of the guys behind it, who's an OG Zwifter and been playing with some. He's been a longtime Zwift hacker, cruising around on the Newsboy bike and stuff like that. Like way back in the day, he would get into the files and mess with stuff.
He got in hot water for riding Richmond in reverse before we could. Like,
yeah,
Zwift was not happy.
Yeah, he had gotten in and broken the secret code for a while. But what is cool about what they're doing in this one, and there's a lot more to it than just this piece, but I think it's a really good learning tool if you want to learn Zwift and learn how to race and be more efficient. Because not only do they tell you what your draft is, but they tell you what your draft potential is and how inefficiently you're drafting, right? It can be like you've got a draft of 120, but you could have a draft of 160. It'll tell you what you're losing in the draft by not drafting efficiently. So if you're not placing yourself optimally, it'll tell you that too. So you could play with their overlays to figure where the sweet spot is in that draft, where Sauce just tells you the draft you have, not necessarily comparing it to the potential that you could have at the same point.
But if you do it, if you only have the draft that you are getting, then you can work on your own of like what's efficient and what's not. So this is actually helping you more by giving you more information, which is kind of contradictory to what you said last week, in the sense that you didn't want people to have the profile, or you didn't want them to have the gradient. Remember, I was complaining about the gradient. And you're like, I want to learn and get an advantage over my other riders. So are you for this pedal games giving them people more information?
It's hard to say whether I'm for it or against it. I think it's a good tool that people can use to learn the game and to get more efficiently. For me as a racer, it will make other people it'll allow other people to close the gap on my skill quicker, learn the game quicker. So I don't necessarily like that part about anything, right? Because I learned it the hard way and I mastered it the hard way, and we're giving them an easier way to do it. It's similar to the gradient thing. But this is something somebody's got to go get, got to go find, got to go invest in and practice, right? Where the gradient's just like smacking you in the face. So I don't feel, I'm not as put off by this as I am the gradient thing as far as the skill gap kind of thing.
And the other thing with, in my opinion, and I might be in the minority here, I think Kellison's the same way. When I'm racing, I am not looking at anything except for the dude in front of me or the gap behind me. So like some people's streams, it's just like puking of data all over it. Like there's so much there.
There's a lot of data out there. Yeah.
There's so much there. There's no way you can process it at race pace. So I mean, maybe Casey can, because he's unbelievable at being able to just speak at 185 beats per minute. So,
right.
But yeah, that's where I'm at. Like if I'm in a race like today or an SRC, our whole plan was just to drag race to the climb. And all I was looking at was the mini map and seeing little red riders stretching out and dropping off. You know, like I couldn't care about anything else. Like if I would have had a sauce overlay for my whoosh, it wouldn't have mattered. All I'd have been looking at is that mini map to see how far stretched we were. All right, can I take 10 seconds to rest, or do I need to keep pushing 5 watts per kilogram over this little bump or whatever is coming? Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Yeah, you can have all the information there, but what can you actually do with it? Like, is it even creating a benefit for you? So
I think you can overdo it. There are key pieces of information that I will use a little bit that's more than what's in the game, but I'm not staring at those things all the time. Like there's times where I'll be like, this feels hard, and it's more of like a double check in my brain where I've got the groups part of Sauce open where I'll look, it'll tell you what the average watts are in the group. So if you're in a group of 30, it'll be like 230. And I'm like, oh, like I should be able to stay under 230 because I'm more efficient than most of these guys. So it's like, I'm making it harder than what it should be because this pack really isn't going that hard or something. But those are quick looks. I'm not staring at those numbers. Same thing with the draft. I don't necessarily look at the draft until something doesn't feel right to me. I don't look at that draft number until I'm like, I should be in the draft here, and I feel like I'm going backwards, and I'll look up and be like, why am I not registering? Or, you know, there's something else going on. I usually don't use that stuff until something feels off, though. I'm not using it as just a part of my racing.
All right. And we're using the pedal games or the sauce for things. There's Zwift, the sauce for Zwift or whatever it's called. Because the other games offer the stuff that we really want.
Yeah.
Right? So this is sort of like we have to hack Zwift because it's not offering the stuff that we really want, or the things we think we want. I like having the draft notification. I miss the corner braking, and I miss the what is it? It was that sort of like how much watts you're saving and how much you need to hold the wheel on RGT. That was a cool indicator that was built into the game. Bike Terra has a draft indicator. I don't know if they've improved on, you know, what you need to kind of hold the power to stay in the group. A lot of people, I think, have asked about that. My Whoosh has the little indicator in the power. Like when you're in the draft, it's green, right? Indy Velo has that as well. They have a little draft slider. But the only one that doesn't have draft indicator, except for the avatar going up and down. If you're on a regular bike, if you're on the Tron bike, you see yourself go sitting up on the hoods or in the drops if you're out of the draft.
It's just an avatar. I like the MyWhoosh one because it's not an extra data element. It's a little nugget, right? It lights up green if you got draft. It's not green if you don't. It's not about a strength of draft. It's just you're in or out. You know, the strength of draft changes a little bit, but I don't think all that's as critical as just more of the alarm of you're out of draft.
Yeah, I like having an indicator to tell me the percentage or the amount of wattage while I'm learning the game. And then when you're getting hey, I just need the indicator because when you're like, hey, if you're right on someone's wheel, yeah, you're getting a lot of draft. And so you're that's what I always do with trying to stay in like a breakaway or try to rotate in the games that I use. So yeah, if you could turn it off for maybe a race or an event and go, hey, you're only just going to get the indicator that you're in the draft or out of the draft. That would be beneficial. All right. Moving on. National championships. It's the state of national championships after. Congratulations to all the winners and all the competitors in the Canadian championships that were happening yesterday and the ones that happened today. Friend of the show, Dominique Charlebois. That should be the way you pronounce it, right? I'm going on a limb. That's Charlebois.
You should have gave me a shot.
I should have. Yeah. Oh my God. I can still. You can. Hey, I've just pronounced it the way I think it is. Go ahead, Brian. Let's hear it.
Let me pull it up so I can get a visual before going off memory. It won't even be close.
I do want to send a thanks out to everyone who jumped through all the hoops. I know attendance was down this year, but we appreciate everyone making the effort and attending the race.
Sounds like he's petitioning to be a Cycling Canada representative soon.
Well, I have offered to volunteer.
There you go. I do have to give a shout out to Lee, because Lee actually is very active. For someone who's, like, hey, I'm just going to compete because it's nationals. That course, he and I talked on the side a little bit. Man, that course sucked.
That was that course, man. That was like a really good course.
Yeah.
But it was horrible to ride. And I didn't pre-ride this year at all. I watched all the races, and
you needed to pre-ride it.
Yeah. You needed, actually, I don't know. If you pre-rode it, you'd be like, I don't want to do this. This is like,
That's true.
It was just 0 watts, 400 watts, 0 watts, 400 watts. Like, it was insane. Like, it was just doing 400 watt repeats nonstop every 15 seconds.
But you were very active in communicating to, especially Cycling Canada stuff, but even, you spilled into the USA stuff the week before. So yeah, the competition has concluded. Is there any other national championships that we know of?
I heard rumors that were a few others maybe coming, but I don't know anything concrete about them.
I heard Australia was having one.
Australia, I think, still on Zwift. Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Well, all the Australians that we know have said we don't hear anything from Australia, Cycling Australia, or whatever it's called, the governing body there. And so I remember I think we had Josh on, and he said, Echelon Racing League is helping with the United States, Canada, Cycling Canada, and Australia, but I haven't heard anything about Australia, and I haven't seen anything from Denmark. Denmark usually had one annually, and then Belgium used to use it.
I did see something about Denmark.
Okay. Finland, I think, usually does theirs in March. If Finland does, I think Finland did it last year, maybe on Zwift too. I can't remember.
It is interesting that, we talked about that through MyWhoosh, it was the constant, like, us beating the drum of North America being left out. It is interesting that North America has been the ones that have jumped on this, this world champs bandwagon that the others haven't, the national champs stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and they're not even,
because we aren't as cycling, heavy as a lot of the European nations are.
No, but the two, like Cycling Canada and the USA Cycling, this is the fourth year that I've been aware of. Now, I think there were ones before the pandemic, during the pandemic, I can't remember, or seeing it.
There was 2 years that were missed, I think 2020 and 2021.
Okay. Yeah, so it's like, Casey brings up a good point. A lot of European nations are heavily represented in the World Championships, but they don't really do national races on any platform unless there's Rouvy races going on or Be Cool ones, for this selection. Not only selections for World Championships, but just whatever, maybe even future athletes outside. If you're like, hey, you're finding people from like the rowing people that have like good genes and can sustain well on a bike. So where's the state of the sport now with at least the North American national championships, including?
It's tough because, I mean, when you read through all the social media, there's a lot of different posts about why people didn't race. You know, it was on my whoosh, don't want to do hoops. Well, if it was on Zwift, we'd get 300 people. I think the major recurring one for most Canadians is the cost.
Yeah, the cost.
The cost is a huge driver. Like, it's a one-off race, and I'm into it for $140. You know, like that's a huge expense.
Yeah, mine just renewed. It's $110.
You know, we spend $100 on a gravel fondo, and you get pizza and beer, a T-shirt, some socks. You know, like, I mean, it's not. Don't want to diminish the effort that gets put into for these races, but you're racing in your garage.
Yeah.
I know after this, tomorrow I'm going to send an email to my provincial body, Cycling BC, to petition for a lower cost race. You know,
Canada,
I know
you should Canada first it. You should throw the old
well,
Canada
I know
first.
5 people, at minimum 5, that if it was $20, they would have been in.
Yeah.
Or like $20 for a license, you know, not on top, you know, plus the race fee. Like, I'm pretty sure Cycling Canada charged $15 to race.
Yeah.
So it'd be like a $35 all in. Here we go.
Yeah. The Echelon Racing League and the national championships included was only like $15.
Well, I think the hoops have been around enough. People know what to expect. It wasn't like the first year that the hoops came out where everyone was like, how do I even film a video? What do I? People are freaking out. The hoops have been there. People know you got to film yourself riding a bike. You got to film yourself weighing yourself. You know, that's it. It's not actually as hard. I mean, I, on the forum, spent a lot of time.
It is hard.
Trying to be neutral about it.
It is hard.
You know, because I don't want to be
hard.
I don't want to come across as a jerk, but like on a lot of the Discord servers, I'd be like, yeah, I can see that it's hard. But then by the end of it, I was like, dudes, get your phone, throw it on a tripod or on some books and film yourself riding your freaking bike. Like, it's actually not hard.
It's hard.
It's hard. I disagree. I disagree with Lee. I with you on the motivation to do it, but Casey and I think are going to agree that it's hard for the average person.
It's hard. I wish there was an easier way to do it. The purpose of it is necessary. Can they make it easier to accomplish that? I think we need to think about that. Is there an easier way to accomplish the same thing? But what they are doing is necessary. It's, can we do it in an easier way? But we can't have a national championship without verifying weight, without verifying the physical trainers, and the person is who the person says they are. That's required. If they can come up with a better way to do it, that it's not as such a big hurdle for people, great. I would be all for it. But it can't be, we aren't going to do it because it's too hard. You have to find a better way, because to me, those things aren't optional at that level, right? You're putting on a national jersey, you're representing your country. No, you have to jump through those hurdles.
It has to be very verified. And so, like, I've made the argument many times on a lot of the Discord servers. I don't personally care what platform hosts the race, but it has to be a verified hoop jumping race.
Yeah.
No matter what. There has to be like a PPT. There has to be weigh-in videos. Has to be. And the problem, I think, with Cycling Canada was the reason they went my whoosh is because a lot of that verification is built into the game. When the race was on Zwift, Cycling Canada hired Indie Velo to do verification. And I think Josh said something like they spent 80% of their budget on third-party verification. So to have the race on Zwift is a huge expense for Cycling Canada compared to my whoosh, who has it built in. But then the attendance is way lower.
It's not really built in. It's just they have a team.
Well, yeah, they know what they're doing. Like I say, they run SRC. There's 300 plus people doing SRC every week. My whoosh has the systems in place to handle PPT videos, weigh-in videos, all of that.
Yeah, it's free to Cycling Canada, but my whoosh is doing it as a courtesy. It's costing them man hours.
I have a hypothetical or an actual question or whatever. can you do a Power Passport test in MyWhoosh and still have a third party do verification?
I mean, you could, but MyWhoosh is so closed door, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like...
See, the Power Passport probably, because you're videoing it. You're
right,
videoing it.
Can you get the data to then send to a third party and go, hey...
Yeah. Well, the data would just be your fit file.
Not the dual part, though.
Yeah, the dual part, no.
You'd have to dual record, download the MyWhoosh file, and then have your own, whatever
so
garment.
So you can get the fit file from MyWhoosh. And
you can download your fit file.
Website,
and that has the dual recording in it.
No.
Well, no, it doesn't. And that's where that jumps you to the next hoop is right now, the duals weren't a requirement. It sounds like maybe at the elite level, but not at the age group level.
Okay.
And I think we disagree on that as a group, whether it should or shouldn't be.
But hold on a second. I'm a former national champion and podium, and I never had a fit file that was from a platform that I won or was on the podium for dual recording. So why? So can we have verification outside of that? Like, we don't need to have dual recording in the game, or is that a necessary part?
It simplifies it. You're saying...
Yeah, I agree. It simplifies it, but is it necessary?
How you do the dual recording, I think I would like to see it as easy as possible, i.e. in the game.
But why can't it be in our fit file?
Well, that's a MyWhoosh question.
Yeah,
it is in your fit file for TPV.
Yeah, it's in my and in Bytera now. Bytera supports dual recordings.
And they're giving it to you in the fit file.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Because MyWhoosh supports it, but they don't give it to you in the fit file.
That's the weird thing. Yeah, that's the weird thing. Why
I was talking to someone offline about this too, and a lot of people also complain because you submit the video through YouTube unlisted, and a lot of people were like, "Man, no one's even watched the video." But I don't think it's the video itself that they really care about. It's the fact that you submitted a video. If you're filming yourself riding your bike and you submit the video and you send them the link, they just go, oh, that person submitted the video. Because really, who's cheating on their submitted video? That's probably super rare.
Well, it's more of like we physically saw you do it.
Well, that's why
I get why they asked for it.
I kept on doing worse and worse videos just to see if they would email me. So like my last weigh-in video before nationals was like me holding my phone being like, I'm on a scale, everyone, look at me, and that was it. And the video lasted a minute, and 18 seconds. And it was actually seen. I have views on it on YouTube. And
probably passed it around the office. Look at this idiot.
Doesn't Echelon Racing League? I think Echelon Racing League does the video verification.
Yes, the Echelon, that went to Echelon.
Somebody in MyWhoosh.
Well,
like,
the day before.
Yeah.
Like the day before one, it went to Echelon.
So I think you could still race in MyWhoosh, and the cost for the verification is covered by MyWhoosh. What if MyWhoosh decides, hey, we don't want to pay for this cost anymore?
Then you still host it there.
Yeah, you still host it, right? So that still could happen. But I think that was the overlying factor for verification costs money, regardless. If MyWhoosh is covering that because they have the platform and they have the funding to do that, that's one thing. It still costs money, and so we still need it. And so the hoops to jump through still need to occur until we have a way everyone's honest. All the do-gooders get to be good, but then there's the do-badders, right?
Until you have perfect hardware that can't be manipulated,
or that too,
to join, right? Yeah, like
a hardware and a software solution that's like, hey, it's infallible, right?
Yeah.
I just went and looked at my passport test for the second one that I had to redo. It had 2 views, so 2 people watched it at some point. In each weigh-in video I had has at least 1 view, and that makes sense.
8.
Yeah, because my weights, I've never changed my weight after I entered it in like March of last year. I've never changed it, and it keeps getting updated. So obviously someone has to watch that.
Yeah.
To change it. But
well, what's the outlook for? So what's coming up next is Swift Games, right? Swift Games is like the next big sort of top tier performance verified competition, right? The agility of MyWhoosh and other platforms seems stronger than Zwift, unless Zwift has their team all dialed in. But like when we did the national championships, or when I did it last weekend, there was the sponsors. Even when the Echelon Racing League, the sponsored banners, all the things that they sold the talkie. Echelon, I think, sold talkies, had talkie sponsors. They had Wahoo or whoever it was. Those are in the game, right? The agility for that, especially in Training Peaks, you can also do that as well. But Zwift, if you're like, hey, I want to throw this thing together, the submission process seems easier now, or are they embracing that now?
We've got to do it in groups.
We've heard that in the past, though, and that was the problem with holding events on Zwift, was that it was difficult for organizers to get the options that they want in the game. Zwift was very like, this is what you get, and we're not adjusting it.
Yeah.
So
maybe those tools need to improve.
There should be like a event creation tool where you just a checklist. I want it on this day, this many laps. This is the route. I mean, I don't know why
RGT had it. I know the drinking game. RGT had it. Well, they opened it up to a small amount of people, and I was one of the people. And you could create. That's why I was creating those like elimination races to try to get people on RGT.
I think most.
And you could do all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, most everybody that's doing it on Zwift, I think, is just doing as a group or whatever it is now, the groups or the clubs.
Yeah, then they submit it.
You create a club or a group event, and then you can share the link, and anybody can join it that gets the link. That's how all these side race
Gong shows and
things
stuff,
are going on.
Or no, the Gong Show something else, right?
The Gong Show, they're just joining.
Yeah, they just show up.
Rides. There's kind of a group of them that get together, and But
if you wanted to do the Spincast cycling show race,
we just create a group and But you're right. You don't get to do advanced options, right? It's a basic race on distance or number of laps. You pick a route, and that's about it. I'm not sure how. I'd have to dig into it. I'm not sure how advanced you can get on power ups and things like that in those creations.
I know
Zwift just doesn't seem that interested in really going down that path.
With the embed, when I would create them, I could just make a race. You know what I mean? That's the only thing. I could take the distance. I could do distance, time, and then worldview, and make it a race. That's it.
But you would have results. I remember doing
as much as we would like to think it is, racing is not driving the sport at all. It's the Ant Bevs and their subscription that Zwift is going after. So they're doing just enough to make racers not super disgruntled, because really racing is the 1% of the 1% on Zwift. Like, why would they revamp their whole system? I mean, I would love to see it, but I mean, from a company side of things, it's a huge expense for very little gain, when they would rather just do Tour of Zwift and increase their subscription fees or increase their subscription quantities, by percentage points.
So what do you guys think is the top reason why people are not doing the national championships, at least in Canada and the United States?
Canada, it's cost. I would have to. That's entirely.
I think it's the license fee, which is what we talked about, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, when it was like, if they added value to it, where it's like, hey, you're doing, I'm paid 110, but I'm doing outdoor racing, and I'm like, I do the esports because it's part of the thing. But if you had, hey, you're going to get 5 or 10 esports sanctioned things that are part of this World Cup thing, which is what we pitched 2 or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. That's the thing. I think the cost is the big thing. I think the hoops are one, but the cost drives the, I'm not going to jump through the hoops. And you'd think the cost would encourage people to jump through the hoops, because they're like, I've invested my time and my money, I'm going to jump through the hoops. But
I don't know. Paying is step one. And that's where people are getting hung up on. That's where all my friends get hung up on, because they're like, oh, nationals. I have friends. a group of friends, 10 of them, that ride multiple times a week indoors. They all talk on Discord voice chat. It's all part of the local club. And as soon as I say, hey, Nationals is on, about 5 or 6 of them go, oh, awesome. And then we go, oh, you need Cycling BC. And they go, yeah, I'm out.
Oh, wow.
Like, that's as soon as it stops. They have no problems with the hoops. They're not paying $100 for Cycling
equipment?
BC. They all have the equipment
Okay,
already. So
okay.
I think it's hard to point it down to one thing. I do agree. I think the cost is a huge factor. I think the other, if I were going to the national body, and I would say your low-hanging fruit, if you want to increase participation, you have to figure out how to get a lower licensing cost for the event. They got to market it. I think one of their biggest low-hanging fruit is just getting the word out there to people that it's an option, and then it's planning. It's what it's going to take to join the race, and what the hoops are needs to be published well enough in advance that it doesn't catch people scrambling to get involved. Yeah, and I know we've had this debate a little bit in our Discord in the past, where, like, you know, somebody's posted, well, all the information was published here in January. I'm like, I'm not talking about some news article on some random other website that lists what it's going to take. You need to be able to go to your cycling body's website, you know, 45 days before the entry deadline, and read the full set of what it is, when it is, what I need to do by what date, and all of that information. Because a lot of people are just going to be like, yeah, whatever. I don't even know. I'm over it.
But what if it was a banner ad on Cycling News? Like,
Yeah.
I get a lot of Rouvy, and like, I still don't do Rouvy, even though I see the banner ad. Is that like, hey, come do the national championships for this, and then they go to this, they click the link or they click the banner ad, and it's like, oh, all these things, all these hoops, and I'm out.
I think it could be a lot of avenues. It could be broadcasting it to your, you know, previous years. Like, you know, I'm on an email list for triathlons that I haven't done for 8 years, but I was once logged into theirs, and they've got my email address. So every year I get an email about their races. You know, like Cycling Canada should have a members list. You know, Cycling USA, they should have a members list that they can notify with that. If they're partnering with a platform like MyWhoosh, can you work with that partner platform to say, hey, on your, you know, PR broadcasts, you know, email, I get emails from MyWhoosh about upcoming updates and things like that. Why isn't there a bullet point in there about we're hosting USA and Cycling Canada national championships, and a link to their website? You know, Echelon Racing League, same way. You know,
I just want to say, like you said at the beginning of what you started talking about, Casey, the information was there. It wasn't when you clicked on the esports, blah, whatever. It wasn't there. It was off on a blog post.
Mm-hmm.
And that was frustrating because it did have important information that would have been nice to know. And the other thing is, you go to Echelon, you click on required equipment. It originally had a 2021 Zwift Insider article linked with trainers that aren't even in the realm of possibility. Yeah. And then they had a list of power meters, cadence sensors, which cadence sensors is not even allowed on MyWhoosh. And then you click on MyWhoosh, and it had totally different, you know what I mean, requirements.
What about the community? What about the community sort of driving this? Like the however many teams, the dirts of the world. Like, how come nobody's driving it there? And it's just like, hey,
it's so funny because I'm just shocked at the lack of general interest. It's freaking nationals. You win a bloody jersey that you get. Like, you are a national champion. And everyone's like, oh, I'm just going to race this. Like, I can't believe, even for the minor hoops, that there's not 10 times the participation. That's why I think the cost is the big thing.
Yeah. The cost, in my situation, I was in shape in November. If you take my November fitness, I don't know if I could have won, but I could have been in the top 3 just looking at the power. You know what I mean? I'm not in the, obviously the race would have been different if I was in it, but just looking at the power numbers, I could have been top 3 with the numbers that were presented just by looking on the paper and on watching
You couldn't hold that fitness or ramp up and ramp down. You had a robot. You had robots, I know that, and then you took a bunch of boat rides. But
I had vacation. I got the
that's
flu.
the thing is like if you want to sacrifice to do like when I did the national championships and I really sacrificed. I was like, I rode the damn course every single day for like 3 months, so I knew it in and out. Right. That's the thing. That's my point or my question is what are the teams like Coalition and dirty Redbirds or whatever they're called. All these things are like, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we get a fund together and we can pay for everyone's license and then we can buy a group thing and let's get all the, because Penvelo would do that, like I do that. We kind of help promote because there's like a lot of like age group national championships, age group worlds, esports now, and so Penvelo, we try to encourage people to, hey, let's try to go after jerseys. Let's try to be Penvelo on the podium a lot. The community doesn't seem to be doing that.
I think that's a good idea from a nationals perspective, but I think looking at the lens of these two in particular, you need the teams to be active on MyWhoosh, which we've already kind of established North America. Now, there's not a lot of teams that are North America based that are strong on the platforms. I think maybe some of the other nationalities maybe could get a little more team involvement. I know there's some big, primarily one nationality kind of teams floating around out there, but they're mainly not U.S. and Canada. I think that's part of that.
And I think the American participation, I know I talked about it last week a little bit. It's so low. It's so low on MyWhoosh.
Yeah, but we're talking e-cycling.
Yeah.
Or whatever, virtual athletics, right? Doesn't matter. Is it RGT? It was on the Zwift last year. How come we didn't have like 45 people in these races?
Right. Right. I think the American aspect of it, and Canadian as well, is for whatever MyWhoosh is not a popular program within the American world. Everyone just rides Zwift. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the lack of people. Because whenever you hop on, if you see an American flag, it's like, oh, look out, here's an American flag. Like, there's so few of them.
But if you do the nationals, there's going to be people.
There's going to be people.
Check me if I'm wrong. Check me if I'm wrong. I didn't race against bots in this race.
Yeah.
I mean, I had 30 people in my race, MyWhoosh on Friday. Just, one of the OTR leagues. It was I think it was 29
where's
or
the
30
OTR?
people.
Where's the OTR? It's on the Rivet, right?
Yeah.
Where are they sweeping up the nationals? Are they? I don't know.
I think there's some North America people doing that one pretty consistently. Yeah, I think it's just getting the word out there. However, I think that's another good avenue, like the ones I've mentioned, Brian. It's working through the teams, working through the organizers, working through the platforms. That there's a lot of ways to connect with these athletes, and it's not that these cycling bodies didn't take full advantage of it. They didn't do it at all. Right. Like they didn't market these at all. And I'm like, to me, that's where the low hanging fruit is, right? There's some kind of core things that they need to do before we can get into some of the more of the marginal gain stuff, right? And to me, they got to be better organized a little early on. That data's all got to be, all that registration information, all those rules need to be centralized. They need to be clear. Yeah. And then they just got to get the word out.
The rules need to be clear. That was when I did my Power Passport, I was losing my mind having to chase down all the stuff.
Well, the barrier to entry is a discussion, but that's a harder solve than those other things we're talking about, right? Because what you need to be sure the people are good. So that barrier to entry is always going to be there a little bit when it comes to the testing and some of that complication.
I agree.
Well, that's the thing too, is, I mean, I didn't want to get fully on into it, but especially with this year, I mean, there was a lot of confusion with ERL. You had to do an ERL qualifying race. You had to sign up for ERL. ERL had their own sort of tech guide. Cycling Canada had their own tech guide. And, we discussed this back in December. There was a lot of information to digest from a lot of different areas. And there was a lot of conflicting information out there. Like ERL, like Brian said, had weird ass cadence sensors, speed sensor, like what? Like it hadn't been updated in 4 years, and then there was just confusion because people didn't really know where to turn to get the information that they wanted. Like, okay, I want to do Canadian Nationals. Oh, well, you got to go to the ERL website, sign up for them first. Then you can go to Canadian Nationals. Like it just wasn't streamlined. And with the cost and the hoops, I think a lot of people sort of looked into it and went, oh my gosh, this is confusing, and bowed out.
It seemed clearer on RGT to me. Like last year was kind of clear, but the echelon, like having to do the echelon races before, like I don't think I had to do that for 2022 and 2023.
This is what was the reason for that?
I think it's just to promote. Well, I think it's data gathering. It's like, hey, you do a Power Passport test, and then you have to do a race that isn't nationals, so that we can get data on you to go. Because you wouldn't want a little fiasco happening during the nationals. That's the thing. It's more of like, hey, we kind of want to. This is just my thought. I don't know if that's true or not. But
yeah. So if they get a race effort to back up their Power Passport test, and then to test their setup. Okay. That makes sense.
And it's kind of like, hey, maybe you might like doing the echelon racing. I just didn't have time this year to do all of them. I had a bad taste in my mouth from last year, but the years
time
before
was stupid. We get screwed on the West Coast.
Oh yeah, West Coast was really tough.
Come on now, like 6:45 a.m. on a Saturday morning. Like you could have made it one more hour.
Jeez, I don't want to hear it. My alarm went up at 3:30.
You're winning, you're getting like money in your bank account.
Yeah.
We're just qualifying for.
Yeah, Brian. Hey, you want to come to the West Coast and do your Sunday race club?
Oh man, I mean,
your 2:30 in the morning race. It's like, do you stay up? Do you go to sleep?
Well, the people
how long do you think it's going to take to go back to sleep? You're going to be up till 9 o'clock in the morning because you're wired.
The people that were racing ERL in the elite category on the West Coast had to do their weigh-in at like 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
To send their weigh-in video. Like, who wants to do that?
Yeah.
No, not nationals, not for echelon recently, but not for nationals. Nationals was pushed back. That time was later. But yeah, the echelon recently. I think it's also to kind of like I get the idea. It's just like it's tough because people. If it was on Zwift, I think it would be more people would be like, oh, okay, cool, I did it, because I think the participation of Echelon Racing League last year ago.
Well, I think that's
on Zwift. It was a much more popular event because it was through the winter break. People were like, "Oh, I'm jumping on. I'm doing my thing." It's like having to do my whoosh, having to launch another app, all these other things. It's those hoops to jump through.
It's hard to compare it to when it was on Zwift though, because Zwift had no pre-authorization, pre-verification to join.
It was unofficial. It was like, oh, you did. Anyone?
No, Echelon Racing League last year, you had to do a.
The Echelon recently. I thought we were talking nationals, like the 2018, 2019.
Oh yeah, no,
unofficial.
No, I don't know anything about that, but yeah.
I think
you just showed up for nationals.
Yeah, they verified the winner after it was over. You didn't have to. So you could have complete garbage in there, and fifth place across the line wins because the first four were Z Power and Sprint Buggin and everything else.
We've come a long way.
It was the Gong Show.
Oh, it was that.
There was 300 people, or 336 in 2019 for the unofficial Zwift Canadian Championships.
That's awesome. Oh my God, that would be so much fun.
Like we say though, it was like half a Z Power dude.
Isn't that like every Tuesday on Zwift?
That's pretty much.
Isn't that the World Championships every Tuesday? It's called Zwift Racing League.
Well, we talk about advertising, and you know what? There would probably be more participation if it was in Zwift, because Zwift Insider would have 75 articles about nationals. Like, so it would get to more people just because it was on Zwift.
You're right. There's an ecosystem there where they're always looking for news content, because those people are. Zwift is big enough now that those third-party places are actually making a living doing those things. So they're always seeking content where you don't have that in the other platforms. But that actually leads me to kind of what I was saying is we're looking at this from a national body perspective, but can we also look at this from a platform perspective? Is is there something in it for a platform? And I think I'm looking at Training Peaks here. Is there something in it for Training Peaks to say, we're going to offer this service? I'm going to reach out to all the national bodies for next year. We're going to provide verification for free, and we're really going to push the national championships on our platform to get people into our platform. Right?
Totally
Like,
is.
right, we're looking at it from a national body perspective, and they need to be better. But I'm also like, MyWhoosh kind of stepped up, and that's why they got it. So why can't one of these other platforms step up to try to gain an advantage or get some momentum going in their own racing platform?
When you, I like the idea.
Yeah.
When you say we're going to offer verification for free, you mean Training Peaks is going to eat the cost?
Yeah, I mean they're going to offer that as a service. If you're willing to host your nationals on our platform, we'll give you the verification service, and kind of take that cost on, because the return for them is going to be potentially recruitment of long-term riders, right? People are going to come to our software and like it.
Zwift didn't do that.
Zwift didn't. No, Zwift just said, yeah, we'll host it, but you're paying for everything.
Yeah.
They're probably paying. Zwift is probably, instead of saying we'll provide it for you, we'll gouge you on it, right? Like, we'll charge you 300% what it'll actually cost for verification.
Didn't they do Zada? Wasn't that under their umbrella, or no?
Yeah, but the fees that they were charging it were ridiculous, I think, was the problem. It wasn't just that you had to pay Zwift for it, but it was some stupid dollar amount
series. Okay,
for the verification. Yeah.
And with Training Peaks, they already have so much auto GQ and stuff built in.
Yeah.
That I can't imagine the cost of the verification would even be that bad, because everything's in the game on the back end. I mean, I know they DQ'd me, and I know it happens. I shouldn't say I still know it happens.
That's a drinking game right there, yeah.
But I know that it's in the game. If something's out of line, you get booted. And I wouldn't think it'd even be hard. If they could do, it would be fantastic if they would be able to almost have like the magic roads. Like, hey, I want this course for the nationals, or even like make a national course, like a UCI World, like MyWhoosh did. Maybe they have like the national championship course. They have like 2-3 variations of it. Canada does this one, USA does one, Europe, or what, not Europe, but say, London does this one, or not. Jesus Christ. Whatever, one of those islands over there on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. But
Scotland.
Yeah. If they would have 3 worlds, hey, these are the worlds you can choose from. Maybe they have a climbing one, a rolling one, a mountain one, whatever. But that would be cool like your Casey's saying. And they have a big.
I think Casey brings
user
base.
base.
I think Casey's idea is a good idea. It's a good pitch.
Yeah,
it's like, hey, if Training Peaks pays for the verification for as many as they want, the governing bodies like Denmark and Belgium and United States, Canada, whoever. And you do it on our platform, and I mean, anyone can do that. Isn't that what MyWhoosh kind of did?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if MyWhoosh did it. I don't know how I would be curious to know the backstory of how they got that together, right? Was that Echelon driven, maybe? Because they were kind of part of the nationals before.
That Echelon, because Echelon had done it previous years. They just went with Echelon, and Echelon had decided this is reckless speculation. I don't know if this is true or not, but I think Echelon went to Zwift and other places and was like, hey, how can we figure out how to do this? And MyWhoosh had the best pitch, and they went with MyWhoosh.
Well, I think that's where I was saying that Zwift doesn't work well with race organizers. And I think that's what ERL moved to.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and what we don't have, and I don't know who, right now in cycling, the only place I can think that would kind of fit this directly would be like a UCI. We don't have like this worldwide entity to standardize how nationals can be done and shore some of that up. And I think that's where you're getting this hodgepodge of one nation's going this way, one nation's doing this way. The rules are different here, the rules are different there. And if you can kind of design a setup and a platform and then distribute that to any nationality that wants to hold the thing, it gets easier, right? Like, here's your basic rules, here's your basic setup. This is, how we're going to do it. And from the national body's perspective, they just have to add their little bit of flavor maybe to the rule book and move on. And we don't really, the UCI is not going to do that, but that in an overall cycling perspective, that's who I think of, who kind of has this overarching connection with all the national bodies. Nobody else really has that. I don't know, in the future, is there some group that's going to do that that's not a platform?
Maybe in the future. That's a great idea.
Yeah, you think about, like, what is it, Athlete Analytics that Bjorn's doing, right? They're kind of trying to be platform agnostic from a verification perspective, but from a, you've got, maybe some of these organizers are that way, but why is Echelon focused on US and Canada and not others? Is it just because of who's running it and that's where they're biased toward, which is fine, but could they not approach 5 other nations and
I'm sure they
help
could
them through it too?
But yeah, I'm sure they could. I think Echelon is Echelon. There's the Echelon Racing League. There's like the vendor side where they offer up these services, which is, what is it? Soup to nuts. We'll do everything for you. We'll handle all the heavy lifting. What are you laughing at, Brian?
What did you just say?
Soup to nuts.
You don't know that?
Soup to nuts?
You've never heard that?
What in the hell is that?
All right, learning time. Go ahead, Casey. You want to tell them?
Yeah, soup to nuts is everything, right? Beginning to end.
Scratch. It's from the scratch. It's from scratch to the soup at the end. It's like, yeah.
Okay.
I've never heard of that before.
Okay, well, Casey and I are old, so we're older than you guys. So yeah, way to derail the thing. But the hey, we're like a one-stop shop. Is that better for you? I don't know, than soup to nuts, right? Hey, we handle all of the communication, all the handling, all the email blasts, all the stuff, we're the middle person, we're the vendor that does it, right? Which they've done these years. Maybe they offer it up to other places, or maybe they don't have the ability to do more than 2 or 3 nations that want to do it. So like Belgium has their own thing, or we can do it. We have our own thing, or Denmark has their own thing. Finland does their own thing, and that's where, like you're saying, like I think you were saying, the UCI kind of like it trickles down to the governing bodies, like, hey, we want you to kind of do this. But then there's also this sort of like the UCI doesn't want to be this kind of like the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, where they're like, we want the nations to have their own sort of version of what they want to do, but it kind of has to fall in line with what we're trying to do. So it's like you still have sort of control, like Olympic trials can be done a certain way. They don't have to be done the way the Olympic Committee offers it, but they'll give guidance. Is that what you were kind of saying, Casey? I'm on board with that. I just don't think we're so fragmented right now. It's hard to get that to go. I think you're muted, Casey.
Yeah.
All right, I'm muted. There's a little bit of flute going on a little bit again.
Flute to nuts. There you go.
Yeah. That's a whole different topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. And like I said, UCI is not the right place to do that. That more just because I don't have faith that they would do that. But that's the only kind of larger, that's the only body above the national level that's doing anything in cycling that I know of right now. But back to the platforms, I also think about this, like this just clicked in my head. Like, why don't you have the national champs season on, like, how much viewership are they going to get on YouTube for the national championships? And it may not be huge, but if you have February as national championship month on your platform, and all of these nations are in different time zones where you could stagger it, and like the first Saturday of the month is these 4 nations, and it's an 8-hour block of separate YouTube shows for each nation. Like, how much exposure are you going to get for your platform by hosting that? And like, if you did 4 or 5 a weekend through February, right? You can host 20 or 25.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. It's like usually the weekend before the Tour de France is like the big national championship through like Europe and Africa and United States. No, not even United States. Like the main European stuff is the national championship weekend. So everyone has their national championship jerseys that if they win it in the Tour de France, because that's like a big thing. Like we just had the national championship for New Zealand. There's this sort of early season stuff, but it's their mid of the summer, like in Australia and New Zealand, where indoor the weather is not the thing. And I think you're right. I think that would be kind of cool, where whether it's like on the all day thing, like every time zone has their own national championships. That would be kind of cool, actually, where it's this giant marathon thing. That's a great pitch, man. I like that.
Right. Like you could start, I mean, for us, it would be kind of bad, right? Because they're going to start at midnight and go through to like the next morning because they're going through Europe. But from a platform perspective, if you think about, if you took the USA and Canada, I'm going to just go out on a limb and say you're going to get more exposure from the European countries' nationals than you are the North American ones. You stack 4 or 5 of those up on a Saturday, Sunday, similar platform to USA and Canada, but you start stacking those up. Like me, like I know what I'm doing for a couple Saturdays, you know, through February. I'm going to get on the bike and spin and watch these guys have some fun. You know, I really enjoyed it. I was bummed I didn't get to sit down and do that with Canada this weekend, but I did with USA and I really enjoyed it. You know, it could be a spectacle. This is where we get into esports, right? Esports isn't just about traditional esports outside of cycling. It's not about athletics. It's about putting on a show. And this is where the platforms could get to put on the show and actually draw in, you know, attract people to their platform.
Yeah. I'm for it. All right. We have reached the time where we go look up what Soup to Nuts actually is on the internet.
Soup to Nuts.
Brian's
Did you look it up?
Some juice.
I'm afraid to Google that. So
you're not at work, right?
Soup to Nuts.
Canada doesn't have soup to nuts as a phrase.
I've never heard that ever.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
that must be like a.
Unless I'm explaining it incorrectly, it's from scratch. It's like building something from scratch or handling everything. Like you make everything from
everything, including the kitchen sink.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soup to nuts is an
go.
American English idiom that conveys the meaning of from beginning to end, derived from a description of a full course dinner. Soup to Nuts may also refer to Soup to Nuts, a 1930 feature film starring a trio who became the Three Stooges.
There you go. Okay.
There you go.
Hey, we learned something because Brian laughed at when I said it because he
just caught me off guard.
He's like, oh, it could have been okay. Now you got to friend of the show, Podium, Elite Women's Canada. What's her name? Flight Wizard's name.
If I'm going to say it, I'm going to say Dominique Charlebois.
All right, we'll go with that. On that note,
she's in chat too.
There you go. Yes, we're gonna go with that. That's her name from now on. There you go. All right. On that note, I haven't waved yet, but we play the music now, and now I'm waving. So goodbye, everybody. Go enjoy the rest of the Super Bowl. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Oh, sorry, the big game.